Hey everyone, Joshua Gibson here with another episode of the Philosophical Weightlifting Podcast. Today I was joined by Canadian World Team member, multiple-time Canadian Championships medalist, and head coach of Siemens Weightlifting, Rachel Siemens. We are back for another episode of the podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gibson, and I am joined today by, I don't know if this is wrong to say, but hugely successful weightlifter from the country up north, if you live in the States, Rachel Siemens. How's it going, Rachel?
It's going well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I always try not to undersell the people I have on because, like, as you know, like, you have been wildly successful. Everyone's been wildly successful. And that's kind of what I wanted to dig into is your recent success. Obviously, you just competed at Worlds in Ashgabat, Turkmenistan?
Yes.
Okay.
Good job, yeah.
So how was that experience? And then we can kind of get into a little more detail.
Yeah, the experience was, at the time, I was disappointed in my performance, like my absolute numerical performance. The experience itself, I was really happy with. I was a lot less nervous than I thought I was going to be. The competition didn't go the way I wanted it to, but kind of coming home and gaining some perspective, I am a little bit more happy with it. My competitions leading into it were obviously really good because I qualified, but I didn't have a lot to learn from it. So doing this one and not doing that well, I came home with like a huge list of, I need to do this, I need to get stronger, all these things. So yeah.
No, of course, anything I say is speculative. I've never been to Worlds, so I can't comment on it. But I feel like it's one of those things where the first time you compete at a major competition like that, it really is about gaining the experience to do it well the next time.
Yes, totally.
But then it's so hard to qualify that you have to rely on your ability to consistently put up performances that will allow you to reach the next level over and over and over so you can be better eventually and then kind of have that peak performance at a big meet.
Yeah.
So for you, what was your favorite moment? Because you were there for longer than just the day you competed, so I'm sure there are plenty of opportunities for something great to come up.
I had a few favorite moments. Really, it was just kind of the whole time leading up to the competition. I journal a lot, so I was trying to predict what I would feel like, and I used the word nervous quite a bit. I thought it was going to be nervous and starstruck, but just that feeling of being at home in the training hall and not being very starstruck and feeling like I actually belonged there and I deserved to be there was really huge. And then following my third clean and jerk, just that little moment that you have on the platform before you walk off to kind of enjoy that environment. I don't know. It was really cool. So, yeah.
Did you get to, I guess, who was your favorite weightlifter that was there? And who was your favorite also to watch?
To watch, it was kind of fun to watch I think it was the 81A session. That was super fun in general, just because it was a lot of great weightlifters, and me and a guy on the Canadian team were sitting in front of the Chinese weightlifting team, and we kind of started cheering with them, and they gave us some stickers to wear, so we were like honorary Chinese. So that was cool. To be honest, I don't really have a lot of favorite lifters. So I just enjoyed watching everyone. Yeah. I made the mistake of watching a session the day before I competed, and I watched alone, and I had some kind of like crazy anxious meltdown where I got really nervous and dizzy and I couldn't feel my legs, and it lasted for like an hour. So that was a huge lesson that I learned. Don't watch sessions the day before you compete, and if you do, not alone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is that something that you also, I mean, when you compete nationally, is that something that you don't normally practice? Like, do you tend to watch sessions before? Or is Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I do. And the difference is I'm usually watching with friends, so we're kind of distracting each other, and I'm not just staring at the lifters in the zone with my mind swirling. So I think having a little group there helped a lot, but alone, not a good thing for me.
Do you think there's a difference when you show up to a national meet, right? You just, I think it was like 2016 or 2017, you took first in like Canadian nationals. I'm not sure what
Yeah.
okay. And is it different, is it different going in with the expectation of, hey, I can win this thing versus, hey, I'm in one of the lower sessions, just want to put up a good total, just want to have a fun time and do well. I mean, how do those two things contrast each other?
Um, for me, it's not so much about the external competition, really, like whether I'm in the A session or the D session, or I'm going in ranked third or first or 40th, whatever. Those things don't matter to me because I've worked really hard on not trying to compete with others. The biggest difference was the Canadians and all of those qualifying competitions. I needed a certain total, so there was a pressure to qualify. Whereas at the Worlds, because I wasn't really using it to qualify for anything, it was really great to be able to just lift and have complete freedom and not worry about a qualification total. So that was the biggest difference. I felt a lot less pressure, a lot less nervous, that kind of stuff.
And how was your preparation leading up to Worlds? Did you feel like you were kind of riding a wave of really good training and really good competitions, or was it kind of the opposite?
I was riding a train of really good competitions while my training was feeling worse and worse and worse. Yeah. So yeah, that was a little bit of a mental barrier. I think I felt a little bit burnt out because it was 3 competitions back to back with not a lot of rest between them. I just had to keep pushing and pushing. So that was a little bit challenging. There wasn't time to really take a bit of a rest after competing and then transition back into it. It was, okay, we're done, we're qualified. Let's, like, 2 days, let's get back into it, that kind of thing.
And we talked about it before we started recording. You mentioned that you kind of sit down with your coach after something like this and figure out what should be done heading forward.
Yeah.
So what are you planning to do heading forward? What are the changes looking like? Were there any kind of learning lessons from that? Like, what's the big takeaway from that competition?
I think the big takeaway is I need to get stronger. Like the last 6 months or so, I think my best front squat, I did 120 once and I failed it a few times, and I've done 115 a few times, but my best clean and jerk is 114.
Wow. That's really efficient.
I need to get a lot stronger. Yeah, like the last, I guess my entire training career has always been about technique, and my coach is very diligent about technique. So I think I've gotten it down pat with a few exceptions. Like there's always things I need to work on. But I think the thing that's going to make the biggest difference right now is solidifying my strength, getting stronger, especially in the squat, and then just a few kind of mental things I need to work on. There were quite a few kind of glaring gaps at the competition. So.
Okay. And I'm not sure what it's like in Canada as far as like how they kind of stack the competitions leading up into the other one and the other one and the other one. So is there like a qualifying procedure that you have to go through to get to Canadian nationals and then put up another qualifying total for Worlds, again?
Yeah, so I'll kind of go backwards. For the World Championship, there was 2 qualifying competitions, and you could do one or both of them. I did both of them. So the Worlds were in, I guess, the end of October. The last qualifier was mid-August, and then the one before that was May. So May, August, October. And then in May was the Canadians. So you had to have qualified for Canadians if you wanted to compete there. So that's kind of 3 competitions there: your qualifier, Canadians, and then our third one, which in BC is called the Ogopogo. But the Ogopogo is an open competition, so you didn't necessarily have to qualify for that one. But it's kind of, I guess the whole season starts around February with our provincial championships, which will lead you into the Canadian championships. If you put up a good total there, you don't necessarily have to compete in the summer to maintain your qualification, but I did, just to see kind of where I was at, if I could get a better total, that kind of thing.
Are you planning on taking that same trajectory this coming year?
I think
Also?
so. Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny, like, um, Canadian weightlifting, I don't really understand all of the rules, but I was shocked to learn that the World Championships qualified me for the Canadian Championships. So I don't necessarily have to do the provincials now, but I mean, it's a long time from now until May, so I most likely will. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And are you kind of the camp, the more you compete, the better you get at competing? Or are you just doing kind of the bare bones major competitions just to qualify for the bigger ones?
So when I first started, it was kind of compete as much as you can to learn how to compete. Recently, I've been doing 4 competitions a year, and I don't know if that's a lot or a little, but that's kind of my system. I'm starting to change my mind a little bit where I would like to compete a bit more just to experiment more with different warm-up styles and stuff like that, because I don't want to experiment the day I have to qualify for something. So, and I mean, you can do it in training, but it's different in competition. It's always different. And I'm one of those people who I think I set a PR in training in 2014, and that was it. Like, I only hit records in competition. So unless I'm really there, I can't get to that level. And that could just be a block that I'm making in my own head. But I think I perform much better in that competition environment. So testing there would be a little bit better.
Yeah, and then I guess just kind of going back to Worlds, just looking at your time in the back room and then on the platform, were there any kind of learning moments warming up or with taking your attempts? Because obviously it's a much different game when you're at an international level and the coaches are at an international level, so they kind of pull out all of the stops. So was there anything that kind of took you by surprise or something you want to change?
Nothing really took me by surprise because I was there more for the experience. Like, my last clean and jerk warm-up set felt horrible. It was awful. So I lowered my opening weight, which I think was a good idea because my clean and jerks didn't feel that great that day. And that was just a smart call and something that I wish I had done in some competitions prior to that. So I know I've learned to kind of speak up when I feel like garbage. And then other than that, yeah, no huge surprises. Like, a weightlifting competition is, I mean, the platform's a little different there, but really it's the same game. So
yeah, I'm not sure how much you have to travel in Canada when you go from meet to meet, but how was it traveling to another country and then trying to acclimate there? Because obviously with like diet, travel, sleep, everything changes, right? So
yeah,
how was that?
It was a bit of a gong show. So I'm coming from the west coast of Canada, and most of our lifters are coming from the east coast. We had to travel in partners just for safety, and I think that might be one of the first times they've done that for a competition. So I ended up traveling east all the way across Canada, meeting some lifters there, and then continuing on. So it was a lot of travel for me. It was a 12-hour time change, and I shockingly adjusted very quick. But it was almost too good of an adjustment because my weigh-in was at 8 p.m. and I lifted at 10 p.m. And the days leading up to it, I was out cold by 11. So I had to try and force myself to stay up late. So I was actually awake during my lifting time. That was a little bit of a struggle. And then as far as the food goes, I had a little bit of weight to lose, and I'm one of those macro counters. Yes, I do that thing.
I track too, so I get it.
Okay, yeah. They had like a cafeteria that we could eat at, but everything was just like, there was oil in everything. There was so much fat and stuff like that. And I knew as soon as I got there that there was no way I'd be able to track. So I just kind of gave up on tracking altogether and just ate with portion sizing and did my best and weighed myself every day, and it worked out well. So, I mean, as good as macro counting is, I still think it's important to be able to lose the scale, lose MyFitnessPal or whatever, and just eat and try and do your best. I think that's a big lesson, and I actually have to go over that with some of my lifters so that making weight isn't like, if they ever got to that level, it's not a huge issue. You need those tools in your back pocket. So
when it comes to losing weight or making weight for a competition, are you kind of the camp that diet does pretty much all of it? Or are you like, I know people that hop in the sauna and they'll stay in there, or they'll do a water cud. There are a lot of different methods. What's kind of
Yeah.
your selected approach?
My own personal approach is with nutrition, with food. I don't water load. I don't sauna. I have done that in the past, and it did not work out well for me. I just felt totally exhausted by the end. So I generally do it with nutrition, and I usually start about a month out, with anywhere from 1.5 to 2 kilos to lose, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in my head, it is a lot. So I do start pretty soon. I hate cutting weight. I hate being hungry. So if I do it quite a ways out, I kind of minimize the extreme torture. Yes.
Okay, so what do you normally walk around at in training in terms of your body weight? Because you compete as a 64, so...
Yeah. Right now I'm a little bit heavier because there was a little bit of post-competition celebrations, and it was my birthday recently, so I've been treating myself a lot. Normally, I'm about 65.5 to 66, but with this new goal of getting stronger, I want to add a kilo to that, so anywhere between 66 and 65.5 is my goal, and I have reached it. Yeah.
Okay. I think we've done a pretty good job at setting the scene for people and getting them excited to hear about how you got into weightlifting. So I guess this would kind of beg the question, when were you introduced to the sport? And then what was your athletic background like before weightlifting?
Right. So I'll kind of start this one off with a little realization I had in the last year or so. I'm really close with my family. I have a younger brother and a sister, an older sister. And I was kind of thinking of what I identified as like a child growing up and throughout my life. And it was weird because I didn't really have an identity. I didn't know what I was. And I always thought my brother was the athletic one and my sister was the artistic one. Because my brother played hockey and my sister's into music and stuff like that. So I was talking to my mom about this and I said, well, what am I? I have no idea. And she was like, are you kidding me, Rachel? You are the athletic one. Luke is all about the numbers and stuff like that. He loves business and finance. She said, from a young age, I was always climbing on stuff and falling off stuff and trying different things. So it kind of made me realize that, yes, my whole life I have tried to be an athlete. Unfortunately, every sport I tried to be an athlete in, I really sucked at. So, yeah, my brother, he's a goaltender in hockey, and he's quite good, and he's gone pretty far. And one day I remember he told me I had the hand-eye coordination of a snake. So that kind of sums up my whole athletic career leading to this. So where would I start? When I was young, I did the usual, like gymnastics, swimming, softball. I begged my parents to quit, but they made me finish off the season, which was really good. That was a good lesson. And then my first real sport that I was into was swimming. And I competed in that for a couple of years. Then I stopped. And I guess as a kid, I was very, very shy and introverted. So around that time, my mom signed me up for acting and dance classes. And my acting teacher at the time was a bit harsh, and she wouldn't even speak to me without me making eye contact with her. So she kind of brought me out of my shell. And so I started getting really into dance at that point. And then when I was in 8th grade, I ended up getting really, really sick. I missed the whole year of school. And it ended up something about like I had a swollen spleen or something, so I couldn't exercise. And I remember when my parents were at work, I would dance in my room and stuff like that just to move around. So I was super sick. And at that time, I discovered Cirque du Soleil. I saw it on TV, and I told my parents that's what I wanted to do. So when I was feeling a little bit better, my mom drove me around to all these different gymnastics clubs just looking for something similar. And we came across the circus on the mainland, which is what us from the island call Vancouver, the mainland, yes. So I ended up doing circus arts until I was about 17, actually. And I did that professionally. Then I ended up injuring myself. So I stopped that and went to university and continued with other sports. Like I tried rock climbing, and I lived abroad in Scotland for a year where I tried rugby, and I did all these things. And it turned out that the only part of sport I ever really enjoyed was like the cross training, the dry line training. I loved going to the gym to train for sports, but I hated actually playing the sports. So when I came back from Scotland, I wasn't doing anything. I was just going to the gym, and I was doing like bent rows with a kettlebell. And somebody asked me if I was doing CrossFit. So I told them that I wasn't doing CrossFit. I had no idea what it was. So I looked it up a little bit. And at first I thought it was silly. It kind of sat in my head for a few weeks. So I finally tried it out, and I started CrossFit in October 2010. Then I did my first weightlifting competition in, I believe, February 2011. So my first CrossFit competition was a weightlifting competition just a few months in. And after that, I kind of continued with CrossFit for a couple of years. I actually went to the CrossFit Games twice with Team Tyrannus. And then after the 2012 games, I decided I was going to just stick to weightlifting. And that was good. I guess it kind of created a conditioning and like a physical durability for me doing CrossFit. But it also introduced me to this one coach who owned a gym that I ended up working at the reception desk for. And that's where my current weightlifting coach was coaching out of at the time. So it all kind of connected through CrossFit. I met Rob, and then here I am. That's a long story.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's a lot there. I think the question I always have, and it's to kind of get some insight into how all of those different sports have kind of led up until this point. Is there anything that you take away from them in terms of how they've helped you develop, maybe physically or mentally? Because I know like baseball players tend to have this hyper developed focus, like their ability to focus is like insane because of that. Is there anything that you still kind of pull from those other sports that you use to help your weightlifting?
Not really the sports. More from the theater and the dance and the circus. I look at weightlifting not so much as a competition, but it's a performance to me. So you're literally out on a stage and you get to show how much work you've done, how strong you are, that kind of stuff. So for me, it's like the ultimate stage to perform on. I still bring that kind of blend of theater and art and stuff into weightlifting. So that's really, I think, the most important thing to me. I never got far enough in any sport to really develop anything like that. So just the theater stuff, and then the cross training behind that and going to the gym on my own kind of developed this relationship for me with the gym where it's kind of a meditative process. So I go in there and I'm kind of in the zone. I learned to sort of let go of the things of the day and just do what I wanted to do. And yeah,
I'm sure your mobility and then just like your physical condition was already so good from all of those other sports and then from the arts, because obviously if you're in like dance, you have to be able to move well and understand where you are in space and all of these kind of things that contribute to your weightlifting performance. So when you started out in weightlifting, kind of interested to hear what your numbers were and then kind of what progress you've made since then.
Right. This is kind of bad. I have a bad memory for that kind of stuff. I think my first competition, I snatched 57 kilos and clean and jerked 79, around there. After that, I have no idea what happened. I have actually, I've graphed all my competitions and I kind of add to it like every 1 or 2 years. But there's like a definite kind of a linear increase to start. And then I think so that was 2011. In 2014, I hit a lot of peaks and I kind of plateaued until 2016. 2016, after that 2-year plateau, I was in a very rough mental shape. And I actually thought about quitting weightlifting. So I decided at that point that some things needed to change, and I tried to take all of my focus off of the numbers, and I really worked on my mental game and just enjoying the process and having different types of PRs. So my performance actually went down in 2017, I guess, and now it's just kind of reached where it was before at the best. So I'm hoping I keep going up a little bit.
Yeah, and you might have mentioned this, but what's so different about this sport of weightlifting that, I mean, if you've been kind of, I don't want to say jumping around, but moving and trying to find something that kind of resonated with you, what's so different about it that you're willing to stick through it during those periods of like year-long plateaus?
That's a good question. No one's ever asked me that. It must have something to do with my relationship with the gym, because I started working out when I was around 14. I remember going to like Fitness World and lying about my age to get a membership. Whenever I had a bad day, whenever something was going on in my life that was upsetting, I would go to the gym and work out, and I'd always feel better afterwards. So I think that's a huge part of it, is the gym is kind of my sanctuary, and now I found something productive to do with that. But other than that, like any sport, I know a lot of people describe weightlifting as it's these two beautiful, complicated movements with so many demands, like flexibility, coordination, strength, power, speed, all this stuff. But lots of sports have that. So I don't think it's specific to just weightlifting, but I don't know, you know, that feeling when you have like a really good snatch and it's like perfect and you're on balance and you just stand right up, like that's what I'm chasing. I think I've had that in competition a few times, and I'm still looking for it and chasing it. So I guess it's the satisfaction of that feeling mixed with my relationship with the gym are what kind of keep me going. So.
And do you train with a team at the gym you're at? Do you train with a lot of like teammates or?
No. So when I first started, I think there were 10 of us. And for the last couple of years, it's just been me and my coach, maybe the last 3 years. So.
Yeah. I guess a lot of people
maybe even 4 years. Yeah.
Well, like I'm assuming a lot of people would hear that, and I don't know if they would like question how you do it, but they would say like, "What's the secret?" Right? Because a lot of people need like teammates to surround them and push them and help them out. And they need someone watching and kind of holding them accountable. But like coming from a place where I trained for a while by myself in like a commercial gym on like a bench press bar, like I just did it because I wanted to do it and I love doing it. So I know what it's like to have that kind of intrinsic drive. But then in your own words, what allows you to train obviously by yourself, or, I mean, you can even be around people, but if they're not training like weightlifting, it's a little bit different. So what kind of drive to continue showing up and putting in the hard work, even when it's incredibly challenging?
Oh, well, yeah, so maybe I'll just describe the gym that I'm at. So it's a public gym, and there are other people there. So when I'm at home visiting my mom, I train in her garage, and there's nothing worse for me than training alone. I hate it. I hate it so much. So there's that. My coach is there pretty much every session, so I have him pushing me, and there's kind of that thing, like he keeps me accountable. I work my hardest when he's around, that kind of thing. But what keeps me going is kind of like that question of why, right? Why are you doing this? And that took me a long time to realize that I originally did it so that I would feel strong. When I don't feel strong in other parts of my life, you know, like shit goes sideways, I always have weightlifting. So it makes me feel strong. My life's been pretty good lately. The last, 5 years or whatever. It's been awesome. I love life. So my why has kind of shifted a little bit. I do coach a club, and I work in the health and fitness industry. So now it's kind of changing to, I train to be strong so that I can help other people be strong in a sense. So that idea of community and stuff like that is a big kind of force behind me, pushing me forward. Even though I do train alone, when I go to work and maybe I'll tell some of my clients about what I did at the gym that day, they celebrate with me. So just because they're not there doesn't mean that I don't have people still cheering for me and pushing me. It's just not in that moment. So. And I talked about this kind of here and there, but I think people undervalue the importance of having a coach in person to watch every rep and every set. And
it's not just like the technical corrections, but it's like, hey, you have a PR on the bar, like attack the
Get it
bar.
together.
Yeah,
Yes.
like come on. This isn't a time to puss out and just
Yeah.
half-ass it. Like,
Yeah.
do you have any kind of rituals you use when you are going for a bigger lift? Any like visualization or self-talk or anything that you use to set yourself up for success for when maybe a PR is on the bar?
So this is kind of weird, but I don't test in training essentially ever. The only time I'll go heavier than the program is if it's a day that I'm feeling really, really good. And that's kind of my call to make with my coach. He used to kind of limit that, but as I've grown in the sport, he lets me take advantage of those days. But I can't remember the last time I went for a PR in training other than for a deadlift, and it was an easy lift that I knew I was going to make, so there wasn't that much of a buildup. So I don't really have that skill in training.
But what about maybe for something like a squat or an accessory movement where you're pushing a rep range, or you're trying to do you go for like rep maxes or something like that?
Not really, no. I don't think in training there's ever really a weight on the bar that I will hesitate or have to really pump myself up for. I have a feeling that's going to change after the last competition, but not for the last few years, I guess. Like it's rare that I'll miss a lift in training. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, do you think there would be benefit to taking heavier lifts in training? Because I know there are different camps where some people say, hey, the sport's maxing your snatch, maxing your clean and jerk. The more you practice doing that, the better you get at doing that.
To a point. So leading up until probably now-ish, I would say no, because I have such a solid technical background of doing things right all the time. But now that I have that kind of in line, I think now is the time to go for those heavier lifts and practice heavy singles. So definitely our sport is one lift, one try, very heavy. If you're doing 60% for tens, that's not the same thing at all. So yeah, I think there's a time and a place for that kind of training. And that's definitely after you've established your technical base, which for most people takes years, right? So testing in competition is good, but like I'd rather have people practice like multiple singles in a specified intensity range than test every day. So not every day, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, then, so say I'm probably getting off topic, but say you have someone come into your weightlifting club and you want to develop them into a very successful weightlifter. So what does it look like when you're setting up their plan for success, say the first few years? Is it, when you talk about not taking heavy singles, is it like work in the 70 to 80% range? Is there some sort of prescription that you can maybe describe for us?
Yeah, so like what I do for my higher level lifters is they'll oftentimes have like an individual program, or if the athlete really believes that it's going to help them, I'll try and set them up with an individualized program. Most of them follow what I call a club program, so it's pretty general. And I mean, I think a program is really important, but at the same time, I think that belief in the program is more important, trust in your coach, and just like integrity and intention with every single rep. Like I hate it when I program 60% and people don't use those reps. They just kind of get through it. So you need to take every single weight and give it as much intention and focus as you can. I think that's what really makes a program come to life. So most of my lifters are on a club-based program, and the weekly average of intensity, I guess, is around 70 to 80%. So usually working in that range, leading into competitions every weekend, we go heavy singles, whether it's a test or like 3 singles with your opening weight or something like that. So it really depends on the phase of training. It's not like I'm going to have them test in a really inappropriate time. Like say we're doing a lot of volume strength. I know that you're not going to be set up for success there. From my own personal experience, if your training isn't going well for a long time, it's really hard mentally. So I want them to feel successful, and I want them to love the sport. Most of them are recreational, and I don't force people to compete. So a lot of them don't even compete. For me, it's about developing good humans and athletes. It's about developing community. So I think if we can have good humans, good athletes, and a good community, that's going to create like a really solid team. Not so much. Yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with that.
No, that's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of how not to stray too much from what you just said, but that's because it's really important. I think one thing you said earlier about people just kind of rushing through their warm-ups. I know I complain about this all the time, but I'll see someone
Yeah.
take the bar and they'll like fuck up a rep and like it looks like crap, like with the bar, and then they like throw weight on, and I'm like,
Oh my
you can
gosh.
take the bar more than once.
Yeah.
Uh, like people get so locked into, I took this weight, I have to go up. It's like, no,
Yeah.
you can take a weight as many times as you want. Like,
Yeah. Don't go up till it feels good, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because people are like, well, I guess if I go up, it'll be heavy enough to feel better. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no,
No.
that doesn't make sense.
Stop it. Stop it right now.
And I do want to call my buddy Ryan out because he'll miss a lift like 3 times, then put more weight on the bar, and I just have to shake my
Does he
head.
ever make it though? Does he make it? That's what irritates me because then what can you say, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, well,
Well, damn
okay.
it.
I guess at a competition, we're just gonna have you miss your last warm up 3 times and go out
Yeah.
and hope for all the
Hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah. Anyways, so I'm trying to figure out how to bridge that. So looking back at the last few years of your competitive career, obviously Worlds is huge, but is there any other moment that sticks out as maybe the most powerful moment you've experienced as a weightlifter in the sport?
Um, yes, I think so. So I won the Canadians in 2016, and that's not the moment I'm talking about. So that was a huge high for me. Following that, I believe I bombed out at my next competition. Um, and then, and that was a weird one because I PR'd my snatch and then bombed out my clean and jerk. So it was like how it's a very, very strange feeling. After that was kind of when I was really frustrated with my lifting and thought about kind of retiring and what the hell am I doing? I had a really horrible mindset. It was a lot of comparison with other people and why are they getting better and not me and all that kind of stuff. And that is absolutely toxic. So one of my comeback competitions, I decided just to go and not really care. And I opened with like the lightest I had opened in maybe years, like 99 kilos, I think I opened with. I hadn't opened sub 100 in years. So it was by no means a good numerical competition. Like the outcome wasn't that good, but being able to walk away from that competition knowing that I had fun and I enjoyed it again and there was no pressure and feeling that kind of brought me back into the sport. And I think sometimes you need to do that. You need to step away, like leave your ego at the door, give yourself something good, and then continue forward. Because it can't all be bad and frustration, right? So
Yeah,
that was a huge moment. Yeah.
that's something I kind of have to remind myself that like no numbers are beneath me just because I've hit like this numbered snatch. Like that doesn't mean that 10 kilos less is somehow less meaningful because
Yes.
one day I'll have to adjust my training or adjust the competition numbers to take something in that range because that's just what's there. But I think that's when a lot of people get in that mindset. That's when you start seeing more bomb outs or misses because they're like, oh, I've snatched 130, so I'm not going to open with anything less than like 125.
Yeah, it's unrealistic.
Yeah, and then kind of going back to what you said about like maxing and training. I mean, when you hit a PR, it's like that's all you can do for one rep. It's the heaviest you've ever done in your entire career. So obviously, having the expectation of always being able to hit that or get close to it is kind of it's like it kind of lulls you into this false sense of hope, I guess.
Yes. PRs are such a crappy thing to chase. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. And that's why I love what you said about chasing consistency or like technical proficiency at weights and then letting the strength movements as you've developed that base kind of pull everything up along with them.
Yeah.
So flipping the script, I mean, you mentioned bombing out at the meet after nationals, but what is the worst moment for you in the sport, and maybe you can try and find something else that's been really hard to recover from or deal with, and there's like a learning lesson kind of hidden in there.
Yeah. I just want to like that maybe that whole year of 2016 was horrible. Um, I remember emailing one of the coaches in BC and just essentially asking, what is wrong with me? Why am I not getting better? I don't understand. And I was so hard on myself. And I was comparing myself to all these lifters on Instagram. You know, we started at the same time. Why is she lifting this? And I'm only lifting this, that kind of thing. And it just destroyed me. Like that was almost my end. So that was probably the worst moment or year of my career. Lessons I learned from that. I unfollowed a lot of people on Instagram, and I've slowly kind of gotten back into social media and actually watching, but most of the time I'm a post and don't really look kind of person. So yeah, that I started doing a lot of journaling and working on my mindset. And I know it's in vogue right now, but I really like the stoicism kind of things. And I have like my training log. I have training journals all the way back to probably 2010, maybe before that, 2009, of like it started with bodybuilding. It's really funny. But now my training log, like half of it is mental stuff. So one page of mentality and attitude, and then the next page is of physical training. So every day I have 2 pages, and I think that stresses the importance and the value that I put on the mental side of things, because at a certain point, that's what makes the difference, right? It's your will and your character and your attitude are that's what's going to carry you through the hard days. It's not necessarily your physical capabilities, right? So.
And you never mentioned, what's interesting is after all these hardships, you never mentioned like blaming your coach for all of this happening. And I think a lot of people kind of fall into that, and then they end up jumping ship and changing coaches and changing teams, like hoping that there's this solution, when in reality, I think when you're in something for such a long amount of time, you just have to kind of experience these ups and downs. I mean, how do you kind of come to terms with that? Because I guess that's like a more unique view of things. Like when something's not going well, it's like, it's something I need to address. It's something that's within my control, and let me try and change the way I view what's going on.
I have no idea how I got to that mentality. I guess I have a tendency to blame things on myself, and I'm very aware of where I place blame. My coach, like I've been working with him however many days a week for like 7 years now. And I am nothing but grateful. Like he stuck with me through dark weeks where I come to the gym. Like a couple of weeks ago, this was a bad idea. I tried to stop caffeine cold turkey. And there were 4 training days in a row where I absolutely shit the bed and I cried. Like every training session was so bad. And by the end, I don't think he would even come near me. Like he kept his distance like very far, to the point where he was in another room looking at the window through the window sometimes. But like if he's going to stick with me through all of that, of course, like I know he's doing everything he can. You know, he comes into the gym all the time with new information, like printouts of mindset work, warm-up work, technique stuff, all of this. And we're both working together. And I know nobody's perfect, because I'm not. I can't expect perfection from him as a coach. I know we're both going to make mistakes. So the only thing I ask is that we learn together, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
If my athletes ever demanded perfection from me, like, they're in for a rough ride, because it is not perfect. So.
Well, okay, so that's an interesting question. Then, how have you made the transition? I don't know when you started your club, but how was it making that transition from athlete to coach? And what kind of learning curves were there where you can kind of reflect on how you and your coach interacted and kind of see that same process unfolding?
Yeah, so I started coaching just a couple years after I started competing.
Okay.
And I've always made it very clear that when I'm an athlete, I'm an athlete. When I'm a coach, I'm a coach. So at the start of every year, I kind of go over the competition schedule with my athletes and I specify, these are the competitions I'm competing in. These are the ones I'm coaching in. And they're welcome to do the ones that I'm competing in, but I will have them coach each other and I won't be there. So I really draw that boundary, and that will probably last until I'm done competing seriously. And then sometimes I'll see them like,
Sorry about that.
I coach in one gym and then I train in the other, but sometimes they train in that one. And then when we're in there, it's more like we're friends. I don't really take on that coaching role when they're there. I think one of the harder things was as I educated myself more and more, I had more and more ideas about what I should be doing in my training. And those ideas were very subjective. They weren't very objective, and my coach is quite good at keeping an objective point of view on things. And I'm learning to do that, even just in day-to-day training. Like, how it feels is not how it looks a lot of the time. You can feel great, look like crap. You can feel like crap, look great. Rarely lines up. So I've learned to be a little bit more objective and honestly just place like all of my trust in what he's got me doing. I don't have the time and energy to really deconstruct my training that much. So
Yeah, it's actually interesting you say that, because I'll tell people all the time, like, hey, that lift looked really good. It actually looked better than the last one. And they're like, well, it felt like crap. And I'm like, yeah. And then we'll repeat that process over and over and over again. And I'm like, eventually you just have to trust that when I say it looked good, I wouldn't be lying to you, and that it's objectively better than the one before it. Like,
yes. And anytime you make a change, like if you're working on something in technique, if you make a change at all, it's going to feel like garbage, but you have to kind of trust that process. So, yeah. Yeah.
And then I think something you mentioned earlier about when you start becoming a coach, you start looking for resources to kind of improve your understanding of the sport and how to improve, how to increase strength or whatever it is. And it's tough when you realize that there are so many ways to do it, to kind of sift through them and trash what's bad and keep what's good, and not get overzealous about, hey, there's this new thing, we should try this, but also not be to the point of holding on to tradition and having that reign supreme. And that's like a really delicate balance I've found, is wanting to integrate and implement new information, but not get rid of what's worked and our understanding of why it worked. I don't know if you've kind of ran into that too.
Yeah. It's a really tough balance to keep. And it's interesting. I was kind of talking with my boyfriend about this last night, and he said the funniest thing. He was like, if you want to get good at something, just fucking do it. Like, like it's not rocket science. Just do it. Yeah. I don't know. He's self-coached, so he's pretty funny.
So I guess the next question I have is, what do you wish you would have known what do you wish you would have known starting in this sport that you know now, that maybe for beginning athletes you can tell them and say, hey, when I started out, I wish I would have realized this, and it would have made the rest of my time training a little bit better?
Sort of two things here, and they're not necessarily, well, maybe three. So the first one is, don't cut weight. Don't try and fit into a weight class when you're first starting out. I really disagree with that. If you're going to compete at a national or international level, go for it. But as a recreational lifter, competitions they shouldn't be a motivator for weight loss or for weight gain. That should be like a lifestyle thing. And if you're going to do it, go for it. But incorporate it into your life, not just into this competition cycle, because it's not really that healthy. Another thing would be, you can't compare yourself to other people. So a couple years ago, maybe in 2011 or 12, I had one training partner who told me this one quote, and I still write it out a lot. It's on my bathroom mirror right now, and it stuck with me for 5 years, is other people's successes are not your failures. And they're not. You can't compare yourself. We're all living a different life. We have different experiences. We live different day-to-day lives. We can't. So just be you. One thing I recently kind of realized at the World Championships, and I think this is why I wasn't very starstruck by a lot of people, was that I'm not good at being another lifter. So I can watch Rebecca Koha snatch and clean and jerk all day, but I'm going to suck if I try and lift like her. I'm only good at being myself. So I need to do what I do to be great. I can't try and be someone else. So don't compare yourself to other people, and don't emulate them too much. Don't try and be someone you're not. And then the third thing would be just establish a good base of trust with your teammates and your coach. So Rob and I now, Rob's my coach, have like I think we have a very trusting relationship. We respect each other a lot. And that has come with working with him 5 days a week for 7 years. You know, he's gotten me to where I am, and I trust him. So I think that's way more important than anything else.
Yeah, all great stuff. And then I guess if you were to answer that same question as a coach, so what do you know now that you wish you would have known when you started out coaching other weightlifters? Is there any advice that you would have? Don't
try and change people. It's a lost cause. Yeah, you can't change people. They have to want to change on their own.
Yeah. So has becoming a coach changed the way you've been an athlete at all in terms of how you approach training or think about training or any of that?
I think it's kind of not hugely. No. The biggest thing would be like usually leading into a competition, I feel like garbage. And then Coach Rachel will come in and say, this is normal. This is how you kind of should be feeling. Just trust the process. But that's really it. Like I said, I really try to keep them separate in my life. So.
Okay. And then kind of looking forward, what are your goals, maybe short term and then long term, in the sport of weightlifting?
Right now, short term for me would be like a couple months to get stronger. And to kind of, I want to keep working on my mindset, because the World Championships kind of sent me back to that thought pattern I had in 2016. So get stronger, work on my mental game. For the year, I mean, I'd love to keep qualifying for international competitions. I know that my competition is very fierce. So I just need to stay ahead of that. And then even longer than that, like I think I have a few more years left in weightlifting, but it's my dream. It's always been my dream to open up like a dirty barbell dungeon kind of gym thing in town. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Awesome. And then you kind of mentioned journaling about kind of like mindset and then also your training. Has there been any theme that's kind of resonated with you the last few days or the last week that you could kind of give us some insight into, maybe something that you've been contemplating or thinking about trying to change?
Well, the last few days and the last few weeks, like that's kind of in my transition period post-competition. So I've been really focusing on just listening to my body. My mind right now is spiraling with all these things I need to work on. And I don't have a program for these 2 weeks, so I just go into the gym and do my thing. And I'll usually go in and get about half done that I want to, just because my body right now can't keep up. So yeah, just focusing on that. And other than that, like leading into the Worlds, it was really about trying not to be someone else and just being myself, because that's where I'm going to do the best. Those are the two big things right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. And just as a heads up to people, maybe, I don't know how many Canadian lifters we have. If people are interested in checking out your weightlifting team, or I don't know if you have like online options or any of that, where could they find all of that information?
So I do most of my stuff is through, I'm mostly on Instagram. So Siemens Weightlifting on Instagram is my personal profile. Siemens WL Club is the club profile. I'm not as active on that one. I'm not very active on my website. I spend most of my time face to face with people. So if you're in Victoria, send me an email and we can connect. If you're out in the world, follow me on Instagram. My website is also siemensweightlifting.com, so you can contact me through there. I haven't gotten into the online coaching yet, mostly because I have my hands full in person right now, but you never know where the future will lead. So
yeah, and then I have a couple questions that I ask everyone that comes on the show, and I think they're always very insightful. So the first one is, in your opinion, do you think it would be useful for everyone to resistance train? And I guess when you have like your entire life devoted to being active and being in the gym and training of some sort, like obviously it's been powerful for you, but how have you noticed that it's changed you as a person?
Well, yeah, I think it's important for everyone, and how it's changed me as a person. I feel like my life is some kind of mission to get people to strength train. Honestly, whether it's weightlifters or I have this group of ladies that I teach twice a week and we do a lot of strength training. It's kind of given me a purpose. So that's what it's done for me. Yeah. But I think everyone should do it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It really is.
It's way better than running for like 20 minutes on a treadmill.
And that's what's funny is like people always tell me like, well, as long as they're active, but I'm like, I don't think you realize what getting strong does for a person.
Yes. Like I had this one woman who I coached for a while, and she came to me one day and she was like, you'll never believe what I did. And her neighbor had this big rock that was on her property line and she hated that rock. And she was like, I moved the rock. So that's huge. She moved the rock, right? Like it's little things like that. And it's being able to like start your lawnmower, which some people haven't been able to do, and then they could do after they worked with me. Like that's where the magic is, right? I mean, weightlifting, yeah, we'll gain a couple kilos on our total, but how meaningful is that in life, right? So,
well, I think it all circles back to what you kind of, I guess what's been a kind of reoccurring theme is like what you can control and just being more attached to that than anything else, because there's obviously so much outside of it. When you are stronger and more capable, it just kind of expands that range of what you can control, right? So you can do those things, you can make those changes. And it obviously will impact the trajectory of your life because you're capable of doing things way beyond what you could have done otherwise. And so I love it. I'm obviously biased. I started a podcast about lifting weights. So, it is what it is. But the last question, this is kind of the one where it's like not so much weightlifting and more so life, but what is one thing that someone could do each day to, say it like two ways, to become a better person or to better their life?
So to better your life, and this is something that I've done every day for a few years now, is just either write or think or tell someone one thing that you're grateful for. Even at the end of a long, shitty day, I'm grateful for my couch. It just kind of turns your mindset around. So I think that would improve their life. And to be a better person, that was the other one?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Maybe to be a better person, I think it's really important to, at the same time, like express gratitude. And that's another thing that's super in vogue right now, but it has totally changed my life. So I make a point of, if I'm really grateful for something someone did or for someone, I will tell them. And it not only makes me feel good, but usually they'll either get like a little uncomfortable and awkward, maybe because they're happy. But I think it's like it's a wonderful human interaction. And I think it makes people feel good. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I just recently talked to someone about kind of a similar thing, and I think people minimize the impact that they think about the impact that it has, and they kind of minimize that in their mind. But in reality, like those things stick with other people, and they kind of carry that with them throughout the day.
Yeah.
So I guess that's like your way of paying it forward, right? You can do so much for a person, but just kind of showing some appreciation is.
Yeah. And I think everyone wants to be appreciated for what they do and what they're trying to do. So it not only makes them feel better, but maybe it'll keep pushing people forward to continue doing what they're doing. And then all of a sudden we have this world of people who are doing good things and they're happy. but that's just a dream. So
Yeah, it's a dream, but there's only one way to work towards that, and that's to, as Rachel said, for everyone listening, just show your appreciation.
yes.
And Rachel, in honor of you coming on the podcast, you've already kind of told people where they can find your weightlifting information and your Instagram and all of that good stuff. Do you have anything else that you can kind of clue us into if we want to find out more about yourself or what you're getting into the next few months?
No, you can just follow along on Instagram, Facebook. You can add me up. That's cool. Yeah, that's really it. Yeah. Look for me at maybe provincials, Canadian championships, that kind of stuff. Yeah. I'm always happy when people send me little messages or say hi. So feel free to do that. It's great.
Yeah. So bombard her with.
Oh God, not too many. Not too many.
Right. Yeah. So Rachel, again, I appreciate you kind of coming on and chatting about your recent experiences at Worlds, and then also your experience in the sport of weightlifting, right? Because I think people listen to this podcast because they love weightlifting, they can't get enough of it, so they have to include it in every minute of their day.
Yes. I mean, I listen to this podcast too, so.
That's awesome. So it just goes to show the quality of the content that I put out if an international level competitor is listening to it. So that means you should go leave a 5-star review on iTunes, share the podcast, subscribe to it, and I guess check us out next week for another great interview with another great weightlifter. Thanks, guys.